Love was never supposed to feel this way again, not after years of silence, not after the body had convinced itself desire was gone forever. But the truth is, love after 50 isn't quieter. It's louder, bolder, and more thrilling than anything imagined before. It begins with a spark that shouldn't have happened, a kiss that breaks open years of loneliness. It grows into a fire that floods every nerve, reminding the body that passion never truly dies. It transforms into the ecstasy of being wanted again, kissed with urgency, held as if the years had never passed, and finally, it becomes the deepest thrill of all, soul and flesh merging, stripping away fear, leaving only truth. This is not the end of love. It is its most powerful rebirth. The spark that shouldn't have happened came like a storm in the quietest hour, unexpected, uninvited, yet impossible to resist. It wasn't planned, it wasn't even something that belonged in reason, but the moment lips touched for the very first time, something inside shifted forever. It was the kind of kiss that carried danger, not because of what the world would say, but because of what it awakened. Years had gone by believing that fire belonged to another season of life, to younger bodies, to times long left behind. But that kiss, soft at first, trembling, uncertain, proved that passion doesn't disappear with age. It hides, waiting for the right moment to burst free, and when it does, it burns hotter, stronger, and more consuming than ever before. It began with closeness that felt innocent, conversations that lingered longer than expected, laughter that touched deeper than friendship should, and eyes that lingered just a second too long. There was a pull, quiet but undeniable, a gravity drawing two hearts toward each other even when the mind whispered it should stop. Every shared smile carried weight. Every silence was charged with something unspoken. There was no rushing, no youthful impatience, only a slow, steady current pulling closer and closer until resistance felt like betrayal of the soul itself. The night it happened, the air was thick with the kind of silence that hums. A hand brushed against another, so lightly it could have been dismissed, but it wasn't. That small touch carried the weight of years of longing that had been buried and silenced. It lingered, trembling, then pulled away, only to return, braver, steadier. The heart pounded louder than reason, and before there was even a thought of what it meant, lips found each other. The kiss was hesitant at first, almost afraid of itself, like two souls testing forbidden waters. But hesitation lasted only a breath. Suddenly, it deepened, and the world disappeared. The softness gave way to hunger, a hunger that years had not dulled but had sharpened. Every nerve came alive, every shiver carried electricity. It wasn't just lips meeting, it was years of silence shattering, loneliness unraveling, life returning. That kiss carried danger, not because it was wrong, but because it was too powerful to control. It was the kind of fire that could no longer be extinguished once lit. It consumed, it demanded. It reminded that passion after 50 isn't weaker, it's stronger, because it comes with the weight of knowing how rare it is, how precious, how easily it could have been missed forever. Breathless, with hearts racing, the kiss ended only for eyes to meet again, and in those eyes was a truth that could not be denied. There was no turning back, no pretending it hadn't happened. Something had been awakened that could never again be silenced. The body remembered what it had once known, but now understood more deeply. Love and desire are not chained to youth. They are timeless, ageless, eternal. Every moment after carried a new electricity. The simple brush of hands became charged. Every glance carried heat. Every word spoke more than language could contain. What had once seemed impossible was now undeniable. The spark had become a flame, and the flame was spreading, filling every corner of the heart, every breath, every thought. The kiss was only the beginning. It unlocked a door that had been closed too long, a door thought to be sealed forever. On the other side was not just passion, but a reminder of what it meant to feel alive. Not the shallow fire of inexperience, but the deep, consuming blaze of love that has waited, ripened, and now demands to be lived fully. The spark that shouldn't have happened did happen. And in that single forbidden kiss, life proved that even after 50, love can return, not as a gentle whisper, but as a roaring flame, hotter and more thrilling than ever imagined. And nothing would ever be the same again. Hands moved with a slowness that carried both fear and reverence, as though touching something too fragile to be real. At first, it felt strange, almost unfamiliar, as if the body no longer remembered what it meant to be traced, to be held with such intent. Years of silence, years of skin untouched in that way, had dulled the memory, had made the body believe that fire belonged to a different season of life. But the moment fingertips began to map the surface again, the truth returned. Desire had never died. It had only been waiting. Each touch sent a ripple deeper than expected. What began as careful, almost tentative, grew stronger with every breath shared in the dark. Nerves long dormant awoke with startling force, demanding to be noticed, demanding to be fed. The shiver running through the body was not fear. It was recognition. A recognition of something that had been lost and yet lived quietly beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to roar back into being. The first kiss had opened the door, but this was something more. It was surrender, not just of flesh but of years of restraint. Hands traced along the shoulders, down the curve of the arm, pausing to hold tightly as though afraid the moment would vanish. And with every stroke, hunger grew sharper. The body, once convinced passion was a memory, responded wildly, almost desperately, as though time itself had been rewound. Breathing deepened, mixing with the sound of skin against skin, a rhythm older than words. Heat spread, not just from closeness, but from the kind of intimacy that carries no rush, no uncertainty. This was not the clumsy passion of youth, frantic and unknowing. This was a deliberate claiming, a rediscovery of every hidden corner, every forgotten ache. And with each passing second, the fire grew. It wasn't only about the body being touched, it was about being seen. Every caress carried a message, wordless yet undeniable. You are still desired, you are still alive, you are still worth every ounce of longing. That truth broke something open inside, something long buried beneath years of quiet routines and silenced desires. To be wanted so fully at this stage of life was more intoxicating than anything felt before. It wasn't just flesh awakening. It was the soul finally remembering what it meant to burn. The kiss deepened again, fierce and tender all at once, as if neither could bear the distance of even a breath. Hands pressed closer, pulling tighter, claiming with a need that refused to be ignored. Every nerve begged for more, and with every touch, restraint slipped further away. What began gently had become a storm, and the body welcomed it, surrendered to it, craved it with a hunger too long denied. Time disappeared. There was no age, no past, no future, only the urgency of now. Skin against skin, hearts pounding, the world outside faded into nothing. It wasn't about chasing youth. It was about discovering something deeper, a passion that only came from knowing how fleeting life could be. That urgency, that knowledge, made every moment heavier, sweeter, more dangerous. Every breath was filled with the taste of rediscovery. Every shiver was proof that desire had not vanished with time, but had grown sharper, deeper, more demanding. The body's forgotten fire had never truly been extinguished. It had been waiting for the right spark, the right touch, the right love to awaken it. And once it was lit, it consumed everything. In that closeness, there was no fear of age, no hesitation about what should or shouldn't be. There was only truth, truth found in the trembling of hands, in the heat of lips pressed together, in the surrender that came when two souls allowed themselves to fall without resistance. It was not just passion, it was rebirth. And as the fire spread, stronger than ever imagined, the body finally remembered what the heart had always known. Desire is timeless, and love, when it comes, makes every forgotten part alive again. To be kissed with such urgency felt like stepping into another life, one that had been lost to time and only now had returned. The first touch of lips carried a hunger that left no space for hesitation, no chance to retreat into fear or doubt. It wasn't gentle in the way of something fleeting, nor careless in the way of something young. It was raw, deliberate, as if every second had been waited for too long. In that kiss, years dissolved, wrinkles, scars, worries. They vanished, leaving only the truth of being wanted, desired, claimed. Arms pulled tighter, holding close in a way that made time irrelevant. The years that had passed, the long stretches of silence, the moments of believing desire had been buried forever. All of it was erased in the way a body was pressed against another with desperate need. To be held like that, as if nothing else in the world mattered, awakened something deeper than memory. It was more than flesh. It was a reminder that the heart was still alive, still capable of being wanted, still worthy of passion. The urgency of that embrace left no doubt. Every breath stolen between kisses carried the weight of something buried and finally unearthed. The body responded wildly, trembling and aching, ached in places thought to have gone numb with time. Hands roamed with certainty, mapping familiar and forgotten places, leaving fire in their wake. Skin flushed, heat spread, and in that moment there was no denying that passion was not only alive, it was burning with an intensity greater than ever felt before. Desire after years of silence is different. It is sharper, deeper, more consuming, because it knows what it means to be absent. Youth burns fast and careless, but later, when it returns, it comes with a force that refuses to be ignored. Every touch mattered. Every sigh mattered. Every moment stretched into something bigger than itself. To be wanted again with such urgency was not just a physical awakening. It was a resurrection. The kiss deepened, bodies pressed closer, and the world fell away. The sound of a heartbeat filled the silence, rapid and uncontrollable, like it might break through the chest. Fingers intertwined, gripping tight, as if to keep the moment from slipping away. Breath mixed with breath, and the taste of longing filled the mouth with something sweeter than any memory. There was no pretending anymore. The body had remembered and the soul had followed. To be desired is to be seen. To be seen is to be alive again. That truth filled every glance, every touch, every kiss. Eyes met between the urgency, and in those eyes was something undeniable. This was not simply lust, not simply need. It was love reclaiming its place, love reminding that even after years, even after silence, it could return stronger, braver, more relentless than before. Every shiver was met with reassurance, every gasp answered by lips pressing harder, deeper. The fire spread until there was no corner of the body untouched by its flame, and instead of fear, instead of hesitation, there was surrender. A surrender that said yes to being wanted, yes to being held, yes to being alive again. Time became meaningless, minutes stretched into eternity, and eternity shrank into a single moment of pure presence. There was no before, no after, only now, this urgent, overwhelming now. Every caress wrote new stories on the skin. Every kiss erased the years of silence, and every sigh was a prayer of gratitude for this rediscovery. Love after 50 carries something younger love never could. The knowledge of how rare it is, how fleeting it can be, how much courage it takes to surrender to it fully. That urgency, that desperate hunger, was not born from youth. It was born from wisdom, from knowing this fire doesn't come often, and when it does, it must be held with both hands, devoured, lived in without restraint. To be kissed with such urgency, to be held as if nothing else had ever mattered, was more than passion. It was a rebirth, a rewriting of the story once believed finished. It was proof that love is timeless, that desire is eternal, and that sometimes the most thrilling chapters begin when least expected. And in that kiss, in that closeness, life was born again. What began as a simple touch was never simple at all. Fingers brushed across skin with the kind of hesitation that belongs to those who know the weight of what they are doing. And yet the hesitation lasted only a moment. The touch lingered, deepened, and grew into something undeniable. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't careless. It was slow, deliberate, filled with meaning far greater than flesh alone could carry. With each passing second, it became clearer that this was not just passion, but something far more powerful, something that demanded to be felt with the soul as much as the body. At first there was fear. Fear of being too vulnerable, fear of being seen too clearly, fear of opening a door that might never be closed again. But the fear was stripped away with every kiss, every caress, every soft breath shared in the stillness. Tenderness wove itself through the fire until both existed at once, each feeding the other. The hunger was undeniable, but so was the gentleness, the way each movement spoke of more than desire. It spoke of care, of reverence, of love too deep to name. Bodies pressed closer, not out of urgency alone, but out of a need to dissolve the distance that had once seemed impossible to cross. Skin against skin carried heat, but beneath that heat was truth, raw and overwhelming. To be touched in that way, to be held without reservation, felt like being known in a way that words could never capture. The heart raced, the breath quickened, but what settled deepest was not just passion. It was the certainty of being seen, fully and without condition. What began with trembling grew into surrender, not the kind of surrender that weakens, but the kind that frees. Walls that had been built over years, walls of silence, walls of doubt, collapsed with every stroke of a hand, every press of lips. The soul, once guarded, once quiet, opened wide and let the fire in, and the fire did not destroy it, purified, leaving nothing but truth in its wake. Love after 50 has a power younger love cannot touch. It carries the weight of everything endured, everything survived, everything longed for but denied. It comes with scars, but those scars make the love fiercer, braver, and infinitely more thrilling. This was not a timid rediscovery. It was a storm, a merging of tenderness and wildness, passion and wisdom, fire and surrender. Every kiss carried history. Every sigh carried relief. Every touch carried gratitude for something almost believed impossible. Hands explored with a devotion that spoke of more than hunger. They moved with care, tracing lines as though reading a story written long ago but never forgotten. Each curve, each scar, each breath was honored, cherished, claimed. And with every moment, passion grew louder. This was not the quiet love so often expected after years. It was wild, untamed, roaring in its intensity. Yet even within that wildness, there was peace, because nothing was hidden, nothing was held back. To give fully and to be received fully, that was the thrill, the deeper thrill that made every nerve tremble and every heartbeat echo louder. Flesh alone could never hold it, for it was the soul that cried out in response. The merging was complete, body and spirit entwined until it was impossible to know where one ended and the other began. It was not only about fire, it was about belonging. Breathless, with lips pressed together and hands clinging tight, the world outside ceased to exist. Age meant nothing. Time meant nothing. The only truth that mattered was this: love was alive, not diminished, not silenced, but magnified by the very years that had passed. The surrender was complete, and in surrender was freedom, and in freedom was joy, and in joy was the kind of passion that makes life worth living. What began as touch had become everything. It had become the proof that love after 50 is not the end, but the most thrilling rebirth of all, louder, wilder, and more consuming than ever imagined. And in that merging of soul and flesh, life itself was reborn. Love after 50 proves that passion has no age. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. because the most thrilling chapters of love are only just beginning.